Here we're going to start looking at our first graph, and this is what we call the production possibilities curve. Okay, we abbreviate this with PPC. Okay, now other textbooks will sometimes call this a production possibilities frontier. So if you ever see that term, it means the same thing: production possibilities frontier. So you might see a PPF, okay? It's the same thing. It's just a different term, but it means the exact same thing, okay? All right, so this is our first graph, and basically it's a very simple graph that allows us to think about opportunity cost, but opportunity cost in production. Everything we've talked about up till now when we talk about opportunity cost is generally from the standpoint of the buyer, right? Do I buy this or do I buy that? Or, it's the standpoint of you as a student. Do I go to class or do I go eat or do I go watch a movie, right? These types of things. These choices you're making with your time and money and resources, right? Well, sellers on the production side are having to do the same thing, right? They have to make choices. Do I produce this or do I produce that? Do I hire more people or do I maybe get some more machines, right? The trade-off between capital and labor, right? So we also have opportunity cost on the production side, and that's what we look at here with what we call production possibilities curve. All right, now it's a very simple graph. It just allows us to talk about opportunity cost and to think about technology, resources, and economic growth. That's primarily what we're able to do here, okay? All right. So to do this, we're going to simplify things down. We're going to pretend this is our country, our nation, and we produce two goods. We do A, or one, I should say. We write code. We make computer programs, apps, things like that. Or two, we can do abstract art, right? But again, we're workers. We have limited time in the day, so we can't do both, right? We can either code or we can use our time to do art or some combination of the two. But either way, we've got to make trade-offs here, okay? So when we construct a production possibilities curve, we start with an axis, right? Just your typical XY axis. And what we do is we put the quantity of each good on either axis, okay? So it actually doesn't matter which axis you use, okay? I've decided to put art up here on the vertical axis, art, and I've put programming, that is computer code, down here on the horizontal axis, okay? You could switch it. It doesn't matter which axes you put the art or the computer code on, okay? All right, so point A is what we could achieve if we spent all of our time making abstract art. That we'd be at point A. And what we mean by this is that this is the most we can achieve. So most we can achieve with current technology and resources. Okay. So it's kind of the most our society can produce at this point in time, okay? So we've got that labeled right here. We'll call that point A, okay? All right, so let's look at the opposite or the other thing we could produce, which is code. If instead we spend all of our time and technology and resources on writing code, the most we can do is point B, okay? So that's what I've got listed here. B represents if we devoted everything, all our resources, time, all our technology to making programs, this is the most we could do. So at point A, we have all art and no code. And at point B, we have all code and no art. Okay? Now, obviously, Most societies prefer something in between, in the middle. And this is what we call the production possibilities curve. So if we draw in a nice curved line between A and B, we call this the production possibilities curve, right? It's the curve connecting points A and B, and it represents all those different possible combinations of art and computer code, right? So point C here would be some combination of code and art, and let's say point D down here would be much more code and less art than point C, okay? So that's what this curve represents, all those different possible combinations of things we could produce, right? And allows us to see opportunity cost, right? So if we are producing here at point C and we decide to move to point D, well, we get more code, but we have to give up art, right? Because we're dedicating people's time to writing programs and they're using less time to make art, right? So it's a trade-off, okay? All right. So now, so far so good. I've got my production possibilities curve here. I've got my maximum amount of art and code I could do. So I've got a question here. Why does the production possibilities curve curve outward? Why didn't I draw it as a straight line between point A and point B? Why did I draw it so it curved outward? Okay. And the answer to this question is that opportunity cost is not constant. Right? If I were to draw a line, that line has a slope. And as you move along that line, it's the same slope. It's the same trade-off between code and art. Right? So let's think about this. Suppose we are here at point B. Okay? We're at point B. So we're living in a world where I am the dictator and I have decreed that all of you will sit and write code all day. Okay? So it means we have lots and lots of programs, but no art. Okay? Let's suppose there's someone named, I don't know, it's George, let's say. George is writing code. Let's say deep down George is an artist. George yearns to make art, right? So suppose one day I notice this and I say, okay, tell you what, George. Everyone else is going to continue to write computer code, but you don't have to do computer code anymore. You get to go spend your time making art, right? So we're going to lose some computer code, right? Because George is no longer spending time writing code, okay? So we're going to move from point B to C, to point C, and this is where we let George make art. Okay? All right, and point C means that we're going to lose some code, right? So we move this way, we lose some code, right? But we gain a bunch of art, okay? And if we think about that in terms of people, we realize, right, George was probably a lousy programmer anyway, right? And so, yeah, we lose some code, but we gain all this art, right? And as we move from point B to C and then C up here to D, right, the same thing. People are going to switch from doing programming to art, but everybody's different, different people. That trade-off, that opportunity cost is going to change, right? There was a big opportunity cost of making George program, right? We gave up a lot of art, but maybe by the time we get to Susie, right, maybe she's a good programmer, right? And the fact that we let her go and make art, and she's a mediocre artist, right, means we gain a little more art, but we gave up a ton of code, right? So notice that as you make that trade-off between people choosing to do art or computer code, it's never constant, right? And so that's why the production possibilities curve is a curve, because it represents that changing opportunity cost as you move along it. Okay. All right. So let's kind of cover some last few topics here for this production possibilities curve. All right, well, we have our curve, but now I've got some points here, right? So can we produce at point C right here? The answer is no. So no, C is unobtainable. That is, we don't have either the resources or the technology to do point C, right? We can't go beyond the production possibilities curve, so we call C unobtainable, okay? All right, so what about point E? Right? Well, point E is obtainable. We could do it. Well, we probably shouldn't do it because point E is what we call inefficient. So no, E is inefficient. Okay. We have the technology and resources and time to produce at point E, but notice, I'm going to draw some little dashed lines in here. Anywhere on this part of the production possibilities curve, right here, between here and here, will always give us both more art and more computer code than we could have at point E, right? So E represents just not using our resources and technology and time well or efficiently, right? So E is inefficient, right? So lastly, point D, right here on the production possibilities curve, is what we call efficient, right? So point point D is efficient. Okay? And that's how we kind of talk about a production possibilities curve, what is possible, what's efficient, what's inefficient, what's obtainable, what's unobtainable. Okay? Now you can also use this curve to talk about economic growth, but we'll get to that in the next video.